now on.
Good choice. Every 3 months, just, go to a different guy.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, well, let's just be casual a little bit. Do you guys have a good day? Did you go out off the ship, see Mexico, anything?
Yeah, I did. I went to the beach. And this place is trippy. I've been down here. Whoa.
I haven't been off the ship yet. I've been doing rehearsals for my show every chance I can, so it was cooped up.
Well, because he doesn't get up till 2, so it only leaves 3 hours.
I got up at like 1 today.
Yeah. Whoa. He's an early riser.
Because I wanted to go catch a little of the Brand X before my rehearsals began.
Did you catch it?
It was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Really incredible.
How about everybody else at the end? Did you guys get off the ship, do anything fun?
Yeah, got off the ship briefly for a while. Watched Hubauer and Son do some sort of things at Mr. Frog's. And then,
I heard they were attacked. Yeah. They were attacked.
The waitress attacked them.
The waitresses were friendly.
A very friendly attack. Come on, we want to hear what happened at Senior Frogs.
You're just going to have to go there next
shots
time.
of tequila were involved. That's all I'll say.
Okay, good story. All right, well, guys, hopefully everybody here caught the pre-cruise and also caught the set yesterday by these guys. It was pretty amazing. Now that the album, The Great Adventure, has been out a couple of weeks, and you've had a chance to play it now, I guess twice only, what have you learned about the album after, it took a while, you played it, you record it, then you don't play it for a while. Now you're out there playing it live. What have you learned about it? What's been hard? What's been different?
It's not as easy as it sounds.
I was going to say the opposite. Really? I'm finding it's actually easier than I was fearing it might be. For me, it was like once we started in rehearsals, it was kind of like riding a wave. You just kind of like ride it, and it takes you all the way home. An hour and 45 minutes later, but yeah.
I learned that I recorded too many high vocal parts.
Eric, how about you? I may be wrong here, but it seems like some of the guitar solos here are a bit longer, a bit more challenging, extended on this album. Is that fair?
Yeah, and when I was recording, I remember just going for some stuff outside of my normal comfort zone, maybe a little crazier, faster, or whatever. And then when I was relearning my own parts, which is weird in itself, because it's amazing how quickly you can forget something you did. I remember just thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm doing. What was that? So it's been interesting, but it's coming together. I think every show's getting tighter and tighter, so looking forward to it.
The encore, the going back to all the previous albums, the retrospective, pretty amazing. What's the story behind that, and how long did it take to pick all the songs, or it was just pretty apparent?
Well, it was my idea, not to pat myself on the back, but I had to talk them into it because I know Bill and Randy are not medley fans, right? Am I correct?
Not terribly.
But I thought it was, because the last Similitude tour, we had a couple different songs that alternated for the encore, but this time around, I figured if people are sitting in through another concept album again, we're really ignoring the back catalog. So I thought it would be a great idea to do an encore of all the albums, going back, starting from Testimony and going through chronologically. So it was my idea to do that, but I kind of threw the challenge over to Bill because I knew he would be very creative with it. So Bill did his own version, which then got tweaked along the way. But
yeah, I did the first cut. I knew that it wouldn't all, survive the final editing process. But I think only a couple bits were change swapped out, and we shortened a few sections because we were trying to keep it a reasonable length, which was really hard. But my first goal was I wanted to get like about 3 minutes from every album, which would have been close to 30 minutes, and so which is I think is probably still pretty close to that.
Curious, when you were putting that together, was it you putting all the songs into like Pro Tools and slicing it up and trying to make it like a piece first?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And I started out trying to come up with how we're going to transition from one to the other, and I quickly gave that up, and I figured we'll just figure it out together when we're in the room to rehearse. So.
And I did the typical thing, which is wait forever till I have time to actually listen to it, right?
You get till 2 weeks before rehearsals to start changing things.
And then I'm like, oh, hey, you know, I don't want to do that whole part. Can we do something else? How about this, right?
Yeah, anything I put in there and wanted to do, pretty much he didn't.
You know what this is? No, it's a booger.
Are you trying to roll a doobie with one finger?
It's a booger.
So, of course, the inevitable comparisons, right? There's always, is this better than Similitude? Is it equal? What is it like? Not that it's fair to compare, but how do you guys see the two, you know, side by side?
I really just want to talk about my beard.
Well, we're gonna get to that.
Why are we talking about all this other stuff? I try not to compare. If I were to compare, I guess the biggest difference for me is I feel like the second half of this one is a little stronger, I think, than the second half of Similitude. I don't know, what about you guys?
I think it was a great companion. It's a little darker, a little tougher. It's hard, I'm sure everybody's had the same thought, wow, how are they going to follow that up, right? How do you follow up an album like Similitude? And naturally, that was a question we considered very carefully on a number of levels and went through a number of different positions on the subject before we arrived at where we did arrive. And in the end, I think it makes a great companion. It's a great companion. It's not meant to be better. It's not even really meant to be drastically different and completely not the same thing, even though that's what we started out doing. But it just ended up being a great companion. Like Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3, they all just sort of work somehow.
It's all part of one story. I mean, I look at it like Godfather and Godfather Part 2, or
Right.
Star Wars and
Just
Empire
a
Strikes
just a
Back.
sequel,
Not in
okay?
terms of quality,
There it
but
is.
just in terms of, somebody's gonna like one better than the other, but it's part of the same story.
Like Alien and Aliens, both good, despite that one was a sequel. It's better.
When we had our first writing session last January with all of us together, that we were finishing up the Tilburg live DVD of Similitude, and Eric and I were sitting out in the evening watching like the cut of the video, and when it finished, we looked at each other and we're like, we're never gonna do anything as cool as this. It was actually kind of discouraging initially, because you just feel like, but you forget how hard it was to get to that point in finishing Similitude. Like any kind of music like that, it's so much work. And I think it's a little bit like, maybe I shouldn't say this, maybe it's a little bit like having a baby, because if you remembered how hard it was, you probably wouldn't ever do it again the second time.
I don't know if everybody knows the backstory, but originally, when we started this album, it wasn't going to be a sequel, it wasn't going to be a double. You wanted a sequel and a double, I think. And if you don't know the backstory...
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure, but I was kind of feeling that direction.
But we made a single album version of this music, a single album and without any connections to Similitude. And we pretty much wrote the entire thing, and we're getting ready to start it. And you just really felt strongly that we needed something that was as spiritual and intense as Similitude. You didn't want to just do just another album. And I'm saying to Neal, it's like, you can't make The Wall every time. You gotta have a couple albums in between, but no, you want to do The Wall every time.
Well, I just felt like it wasn't everything that it wanted to be, and I can't explain it any better than that. I don't know. I just felt like it's good, but and Similitude did spoil me in a way. I felt like the piece itself delivered every concert, and it was a wonderful thing to feel like you didn't have to try to deliver it. You could just stand and deliver it, and it would do it,
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to go on tour, particularly with anything less than that. And I thought what we had done was good, but I thought that it could be greater. And so I kind of dropped the bomb in February because Mike was supposed to come back in March and do his drums. And I said, and this is the first time it's ever happened with us on any of the records we worked on, Mike and I, where I came away from those sessions and said, I don't think it's there. I think we need to spend more time. And you were like, well, that's nice, but I have no time. And it was a tough call, because then, we had a Skype call and we had to just kind of hash it out. Well, what do you guys want to do? What are you feeling?
How persuasive did you have to be, or once you come up with that, they know, all right, the train's left the building, we're going, that's it?
Oh, well, I think what really sealed it was that when Neal sort of did his version of the album, it was more complete. The whole thing came together as a more complete album because he had fleshed out a lot of lyrics. When we left in January, there was no lyrics. They were like, silly lyrics about Disneyland and water parks. But,
Raging waters is a ride at Disneyland.
And it's not. But
Child of Wonder. That was the working lyrics.
Oh, working lyrics.
So anyway, once you hear it in a little more complete, it's like, okay, we get it, and he had extracted a good deal of the January album. Yeah. And put that into the new one. So it wasn't, and here, there's another caveat on top of this. We originally started writing for this back in August of 17, before we went out on that August tour run in the Northeast. We got together for 3 or 4 days, and 3 of those songs are on the album, so they stuck. And at that time, we were kind of like, these were kind of written with the similitude songs, and it's the same idea and the same inspiration. And we were kind of like, I don't think that'll matter, nobody will care. So we ended up keeping some of those, and then his version. So now we have like 2 versions of the album, and it's like, well, the only way this is going to work, because we were all like, well, yeah, but there was this, and there was that one, and the original version, I loved it the way that was, and so it was all kinds of little things still that we wanted to pull in to the new one, and plus the new version was 2.5 hours of music, so obviously there was a lot more than we could actually use. So yeah, it's been a process, and then just trying to find the time to get together again. That's what made us come back together again and say, here's what we got, now what do we need to do with it? And I think they wrote like right up until the last minute to give him something to track to. So it was pretty tight getting the drum form, because after that we can go home and then flesh it out. And even at that point, we didn't know what the album was going to sound like. You don't ever know until you get Rich's mixes, because then it allows you to hear everything in its place, and then you can make intelligent decisions about what you have. Up until that point, it's a waiting game. So it's been quite a process. But I think it was good that we ran out of time. It was like we got a deadline, and we've got 3 months to get this done. We're used to really being able to take our time to do these things and spend a lot of time fleshing out, and we just didn't have it this time.
Yeah, in July. Now, the album's not written. We've got this hour-long version and this 2.5-hour-long version. We know we need to work on it. But in July, I'm like, it'd be great to play this or debut it on Cruise to the Edge. But guys, we started doing the time backwards. That means we have to finish all of our parts in August, so Rich can then start mixing in September, October, and deliver in November to make the release date in January. And guys, can we do it? No. Because we had Morse Fest and the Jesus Christ the Exorcist musical to learn and do, and it was all at the same time. So it was pretty insane, but somehow it happened.
We were sending Rich tracks up into the last 5 minutes, Oh, by the way, here's a thing I fixed. Then we just shot that video in LA. These guys end up because the one video was shot literally a mile away from the Mouse House. So after the video shoot, they went back to Rich's and they started working on it again. Yeah.
That was at the end of
we need to
November.
put this back in, and where's that thing? And I'd like to hear that thing a little louder, and they sat there all
And
night.
the vinyl mixes are slightly different in places because we have the vinyl masters need to be delivered
Like
at least a
CD.
month or two before the CD or digital masters.
Yeah.
So we had to get the vinyl masters out, but then once after that happened, there were still changes being made to what became the final digital or CD
Should
version.
that be a contest to spot the
Yeah.
differences?
Find the
Because
differences.
there are actually, I know, I can think of like 3 keyboard parts that were actually removed for the CD version.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
It'd be like when Yes did Leave It on MTV, where there was like 41 versions, and they had a contest to identify what was different about every version.
We swore we weren't going to change it either. We just stopped by Rich's just to hang out and say hi. And he starts playing it. I'm like, oh, that bell. When you hit the bell in the and then you hit the bell, it's like, oh man, that's not loud
You know
enough.
that song has a title?
So it's louder on the CD than it is on vinyl.
I didn't know that song had a title. It's just an instrumental passage. Somebody asked me in an interview about, so tell me about the bass line in, what's the name? I didn't
Momentary Change.
A Momentary Change. And I'm like,
What album was that from?
I'm scrambling to try to find a track listing. So I say, can you tell me what song that is? I've never heard of that song. I was like, I didn't even know it was a title.
Oh, it's Mike did the ID points.
Yeah, I did the ID points, and there were a lot of times where an instrumental passage needed a lyric. So there were a few songs that you came up with a lyric, a title from a section or a lyric or whatever. Yeah, I guess everybody wasn't in the loop at that point.
Oh yeah. We got to rehearsals and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Playing the part." I took that part out. You took my part out?
His entrance in the show and the album.
How dare you?
The very what used to be your very first entrance on the album was removed. So in rehearsals he started playing it and everyone's like, "What are you doing? You gotta wait." He looked so disappointed. We actually had to play him the album to prove that it wasn't there.
I didn't like the quarter notes on the bass for. It's only for a couple measures.
Yeah, it wasn't any big deal. I didn't really care about that. But I had to fight for the other stuff that they wanted to do.
I want to just draw attention to Eric, who closes out the album vocally, just like he did on Similitude. Amazing job. Give it up for Eric. Neal, you've been very giving about Bill and Eric taking vocal parts and sharing those duties and giving Eric the closing. How does that come about? How's that decision made? And how did it end up that way?
I think it's just because he wrote it too high. I'm just kidding.
Well, as we worked on it as a band, we wanted to peak it out. And yeah, his voice is
Sounds great, doesn't it?
several steps higher than mine, and so is Bill's. So
He sounds so good.
amazing.
His voice was great on the album, as well as his playing is over the edge.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
It's also one of those things where you're in the studio and you do it and you feel pretty good about it, and then it's like, I have to do that every night. Oh man. And then they add in, oh, I think we should do this medley and end with the big Similitude ending. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna do this? So it's a good stretch. I'm growing a lot vocally, I feel, so it's been good.
So I think we should maybe take a couple of questions from the audience. Anybody have a question? Right here. This mic is wired.
Neil says, I hope it's about my beard.
That's what I was going to ask you. You change the name now to Neal's Beard. First of all, awesome stick catch during the gig, Mike.
Oh yeah, you saw
I
that,
think
huh?
somebody got that on video.
I hope so. That was amazing. Well, it was an awesome stick miss, but then I got the rebound. I tossed it, I grabbed it, and it fell out of my hands and bounced off the drum, and then I caught the rebound. Get lucky sometimes.
Now for the real serious question for Neal. I was wondering, can you name or all of the bands that Mike has been in or
Oh man, no, no, absolutely.
He's in 4 of them. No,
Yeah, I can
no
read.
cheating. Neil, well, let's start with the 4 that you're in.
Okay, Flying Colors, Transatlantic, Neal Morse Band, and what? Yellow Meadow Custard. Okay.
Is
I
that
think
a real
that-
question? You're really gonna make him do this? Is it real challenge?
Let's see. All the bands he's been in. Let's see. So, well, of course, Dream Theater, Big Elf, Liquid Tension. What was the thing called with Tony McAlpine? You guys?
PSMS?
PSMS. Yeah.
Christmas.
And Sons of Apollo, of course. Oh man, this is gonna be. Is this bad? Am I doing okay?
Mr. Winery Dogs.
Oh, Winery Dogs. Yeah.
Adrenaline Mob.
All
OSI.
right. Yeah.
Avenged Sevenfold, Twisted
Matter
Sister.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Jeez.
Very good though, I'm impressed. Neil.
Oh.
This question is for Mike. Mike,
Oh, hello.
Neal says that in the compositional process, you're a master of looking at the big picture and knitting things together. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Thank you, Neil. I mean, I think I'm obsessive over all things, yeah. I mean, I'm very OCD, so song sequence, the layout, where the track IDs fall, when we're writing the songs, like the way they flow, the way they connect, the arrangements, that's kind of like my thing. And a lot of times, Neil will come in with hours and hours of music, and all the other guys will have music, but I'm not like that guy. I don't come in with something. I'm more of like, I take inventory of everything and know everybody's demos and say, oh, what about that part? That would be a great bridge for this part or whatever. And it's not just here. I mean, it's kind of the way it is in all the bands I'm a part of. I think it's just my OCD. I don't know, but I don't know. I'm a collaborative kind of control freak, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
He's a producer that doesn't stay on the phone the whole time.
Another question?
So kind of related to that, so I know you and Randy have played with Neil on his record since 2003, and obviously you were with him in Transatlantic before that, but I imagine at some point, I'm curious the transition when Neil decided to do the Neal Morse Band and it became kind of more of a collective thing. I'm curious about how that happened, and just speaking of that, if you were involved in any of the arranging, or was it mainly just Neil when it was just Neal Morse, not the Neal Morse Band? Did you have as much involvement in that? Kind of that's part of the question. Then part of it, how did you guys decide to sort of involve into the Neal Morse Band, where it's much more collective and everything? Just kind of curious how that process went.
Well, are you asking me specifically?
Yeah, kind of you as well as kind of the whole band. Just curious, you and Neil, I guess mainly.
I mean, when Randy and I were doing the Neal Morse albums, well, Randy didn't do Testimony, so Testimony was 1,000% Neil. And you played almost everything, and I came in and I was just at his service, so I didn't make a single suggestion. I was his clay, whatever he wanted, that was his album. But then Randy toured with us on Testimony, and then he got brought into the fold. So the first album the three of us made together was one, but it was still Neil's music, but he welcomed our input, with arrangement ideas. Like the one demos were very different, they got changed up a lot. It was his music and lyrics and everything, although even Randy made some lyrical suggestions.
Contributed some lyrics and some of the motifs and things also.
Yeah, on one, we co-wrote a lot of bits on that.
But it was still ultimately Neil's band and album, and we were, ultimately doing whatever he'd want. But if he wanted input, we were more than happy to give it. But then, as far as turning this into a band, I mean, once we played together on the Momentum tour, I guess you should tell the story how we found Bill and Eric and Adson at the time. But just to finish up that thought, once we toured with this band on the Momentum tour, it was like, oh my God, there's just such talent here. We should utilize it to write together and sing together and share it.
Well, yeah, I had which album was it? Maybe Testimony 2, I think. I wound up having one band in America and one band in Europe, I think it was. And I just didn't want to do that again. I felt like it wasn't the best thing. I mean, both bands were really great. But I thought I'd rather have, one group of guys. So we began to look around for people that could play this stuff and sing it. Because if it's going to be a 5-piece, you're going to have some guys that can really play and really sing. So I had to open auditions and wound up finding Eric and Bill through that. And what a blessing. And then so we began to play live, and as Mike was saying, there was some really great chemistry. And really, I prayed about it. I think Randy had suggested that we get together and write, but I prayed about it and I felt that yes inside, and that was really it for me. And I also, it was a grand experiment on that album for me. I did not come in with anything. I decided for that album to just come in and let's just, the 5 of us get together and see what happens. And I just don't usually do that because I think I'm a little too paranoid that we won't come up with anything. It's like we can't get everybody together, fly in and do all that and not have an album. So a lot of times I'll create a lot of demos to throw out there, but I didn't on the Grand Experiment. And then obviously it was a really blessed event, and I felt the hand of God in the whole thing, and I still do.
We got a question over here. If you've got time for 2 more.
I got 100 questions. I'm limited to 2. If you were locked in solitary confinement for the rest of your life and could only listen to one record that you didn't perform on, what would that be? You can think about that one while I ask you the next question. Your sound crew seems so spot on. I know with a limited amount of sound check time, you guys are tweaking it on the first couple songs, and your sound guys are picking up every little cue that you ask for. How many guys, you have a guy watching each one of you? What's your sound crew like?
It's Rich Mauser who mixes our albums.
Give it up for Rich.
And he knows the music in such detail because he spends months and months mixing it, and spending time with it, knowing every nuance of every instrument. So he's been touring with us, and with me and Neal with Flying Colors and Transatlantic and Spock's Beard. So yeah, he's been part of the family for a long time.
You can't see everybody.
Well, that's his job. Yeah, he has to.
Oh, I would definitely bring How to Build a Boat.
One record, Close to the Edge.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I can't just bring my iPhone with everything. One record. I think The Wall, because it's so dense and so deep, and it's long, so it would sustain me, keep me entertained for a while.
Bill?
My answer would be different every time you ask me this question. So
Yeah.
So it would be an album that I'm thinking, what album do I put it on, and it always sounds fresh to me, and I just love it. Maybe this is weird in this group of people, would be Rockin' the Suburbs by Ben Folds.
Eric?
Scenes from a Memory.
Thanks, buddy. He's just a kid.
Real quick, Neal, maybe we should mention the new streaming app that you just launched like a week or 2 ago.
Yeah.
Waterfall. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one of the developers is here. Yeah. Oh, there you are. Yeah,
He's wearing the shirt. That's the logo.
Thank you. That's Andy. We worked on the iOS platform. It's a streaming app with everything I've ever done and some things maybe you wish I hadn't done. It's got a zillion records on there with lots of stuff. It's a subscription thing, and it's discounted for the inner circle if you're part of that. But yeah, I've enjoyed streaming myself, and I wanted to create something that would be kind of unique and give people that experience and good sound quality, and you never have to get out of your recliner. That's the main thing.
One of the guys that helped you, their good friend of yours, Jeff Bailey, is actually watching live on this phone.
Oh, is he? Hello, Jeff. The man never sleeps. Get some rest, Jeff. What is it, like 3 in the morning in Belfast?
He really never sleeps, that's true.
That's crazy.
Yeah. All right, so you guys, you're done playing, but the minute we get off the ship, Saturday, you're playing right away in Orlando. And then the tour kicks off, right? So.
But don't miss my show tomorrow. 5. I still play tomorrow at 5. I want to make sure everybody's there. We got some cool stuff planned.
Can you give us any teasers or no?
It's going to be awesome. That's all I'll say. I'm ready.
He doesn't do teasers.
All right. All right, now one last question.
Hi. So I was yesterday there, obviously, and it was amazing. I'm still amazed by your show. We missed the pre-party, so just listening to the second album was amazing. And it makes me wonder, why didn't you consider Mexico for your big adventure? Because Michael can confirm this. You know, he's been there so many times in Mexico playing with Dream, and there's a huge crowd fan base there. Maybe more metal or something, but I don't know, Michael. Maybe you can pull some strings and go there.
We usually do play Mexico. This is actually going to be the first time we haven't played Mexico in a long time, I think. Or South America.
Okay. We're still working on it.
We're still hoping.
It's not a dead thing yet. I got somebody working on South American shows, and of course, if that's the case, we'll get a Mexico City show. We love Mexico City. We've been there a few times, and the people are wonderful, and it's a great experience every time we've done it. So we
South America too.
But some of these things take time to really flesh out, and quite honestly, it's just not. It's still up in the air. Everything's still being worked on.
The honest answer, if you really want to know why sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, the honest answer is we're at the mercy of the promoters that will, offer us, make us an offer or invite us. We can't just show up and say, hey, okay, we're here. There's a lot of details, a lot of finances involved. So if we could get an offer that is doable, we would love to.
Yeah, the only gig we can choose ourselves and make them bring us is Truth to the End. I'm just kidding. They're always very kind to us, but not really. We don't want to leave out South America and Mexico. We are working very hard to try to make it happen. So it's.
Neil, when do we find out about what's happening at Morse Fest? If you want to spill the beans now.
No. I think we're going to announce in mid-March. That's the current plan, but we know what it is.
I am already committed. I think that was announced. Yes. Yeah, I will be there. That's already on my schedule.
All right, one last quick question from Brooks.
This is kind of from a musician point of view, but it's one thing to have the chops, which obviously all of you guys have incredible chops, and also kind of a little bit directed towards Mike, because you're in 600 different bands. How the hell do you guys remember all that crazy prog? How do you remember? What is your secret to remembering it? Because again, to have the chops is one thing, but to retain it and be able to pull it off, and you just did the Great Adventure just came out, and you did boom, and then there you are performing it live. What are you?
We probably
a lot of ginkgo biloba, or
we probably all have different answers. My answer is I just was somehow blessed with an elephant's memory, and I'm not gonna give anything away, but I had rehearsal today for my show tomorrow, and had to play a very, very long song that I hadn't played in about 15 years, and I only listened to it last night for the first time to refresh my memory.
Makes me so mad.
And
so sometimes he doesn't even listen
at all. Yeah.
He doesn't even listen.
It's just packed in there, If I get called to do gigs with other people, then I have to, obviously I have to learn it. I have to make notes, I have to make cheat sheets. But anything that I'm a part of, that I've written or performed or released, it's kind of in there forever.
He's a very sick man.
There's no secret.
I don't remember the question.
I actually hesitated to audition for the band because I really didn't know if I could do that. And to me, it seems silly now because it's just a 30-minute song. It's just, 6 5-minute songs put together. So, you can remember 6 5-minute songs, you can remember a 30-minute song. But there's a lot of notes, and the key, I think, is, and you probably just ruined the tour for me, because if you think about how you do that, then it screws you up.
The hardest songs to remember are the songs with the least amount of notes. It's the ballads that kill me every time.
Yeah, well, we were rehearsing something, I won't give anything away, where you basically were just trading 4 bars. And we were joking, like, why is this always the hardest part? Like, literally trying to get guys to just trade 4 bars, 8 bars, and like, we prog musicians, it's always, like, the hardest thing.
Yeah, I think that's true, because it gets so repetitive, you just lose where you are. Yeah. That makes sense. Eric, what about you?
I think you gotta force yourself to do stuff like that, like learning immense amounts of music, which I've had to do since I've known these guys. And you'll surprise yourself with how much you can retain. And obviously there's lots of practice and listening that goes on, but yeah, I mean, when I first started, I was like, I thought the same thing. I don't know, how do they remember all this stuff? You just push past that point where you think you can't do it, and you'll surprise yourself.
Repetition.
All right, guys, please give it up for the Neal Morse Band. Thank you. And don't forget to see Mike's show tomorrow, 5 o'clock. At the pool.
At the pool, 5 o'clock at the pool.
All